All right, welcome everyone to another webinar presented by the Office of Family Life for the Catholic Diocese of St. Augustine. I'm Mike Day, and I'm going to guide you through a quick overview of how this works if you haven't joined us before. If you are participating through Zoom, there's a couple ways that you can participate and join in the conversation. We've got a chat icon you can click on below and enter any comments, as well as a Q&A button that you can click on and submit any questions that you might have for the panelists during this webinar session. We'll also be streaming this live through Facebook on our Facebook page, DOSA Family Life. And if you're joining us through Facebook Live, we're happy to have you as well. And you can also submit a question in the comments section. I'll be monitoring that as the webinar goes on and happy to relay any comments or questions that you might submit through there. So today we'll be discussing marriage convalidation, bringing couples home with Raquel and Chad Tripp. Raquel Tripp is a marriage building specialist serving Catholic parishes in the Diocese of St. Augustine. She and Chad have previously served as family life coordinators at Resurrection Parish and as the responsible couple for the Southeast Region USA of Teams of Our Lady. They are certified trainers and facilitators for various programs, including Adventures in Marriage, Prepare and Rich, and Pathways to the Sacrament for couples seeking convalidation. So it is my pleasure to welcome Chad and Raquel Tripp.
We are here. Sorry, I had to find that unmute. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction.
All right, thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to share this important ministry, and we're going to get to it right now. We're going to start telling you stories about 3 couples that here in the diocese that were able to come into full communion in the church in their marriages. So, Chad, can you lead us with the first story?
I will. So the first story, now these are stories, guys. So we're, like Raquel said, they are real cases. In some cases, we're going to use real names, and others maybe we won't. But these are folks who maybe saw in the parish bulletin or heard in a particular program about Pathways to the Sacrament, which is something that allows folks to learn about how to convalidate their marriage. And these stories are stories of people that not only came to that meeting, that information meeting, to learn about it, but these are folks that actually went through the process with their local parish and are now fully home, if you will. So the first one is Juan and Maria. So Juan and Maria had been living together for 11 years. And Maria had 3 children from a previous relationship. And Juan was Catholic. He was definitely at church Christmas, Easter. And Maria was evangelical, so Protestant. So she had her church, and basically he would go to the Catholic church. And I remember when we first met Juan, he had mentioned this, and he said, we don't need a paper to show how much we love each other. And in his mind, the paper being some type of wedding certificate. So he that was definitely his state of mind, is we're fine without a piece of paper.
Yeah, their love was going to be enough.
His love for her was beyond any paper. So however, life happens, right? And they started growing apart, and there was a point where he felt he needed to go to Mass more. So he would go to Mass more, and Maria started to go with him. And that's when they heard about, in one of the Mass, they heard about a marriage enrichment program that was being held over at Holy Family on Bay Meadows.
In Spanish.
In Spanish. It was a Spanish-speaking marriage enrichment weekend. And they came. They attended Adventures in Marriage, and they actually attended Aventuras in Matrimonio. And while practicing some skills, they had shared that they now have this desire to be married in the church. And so Raquel had mentioned to them that there's an upcoming Pathways to the sacrament, which is what the information meeting is called, and that would be the best way for them to get good information, because they were really had it on their heart that they wanted that. And
And Father James I was helping Father James start a marriage ministry. He was really, really concerned about helping the couples in the Hispanic community, in the Hispanic community, especially with convalidations.
Yeah. So, they definitely had a lot of conflicting information that they had received. They, like many people, consulted with friends, and the friends gave them, you got to go ahead and get married civilly first. Go down to the courthouse, see a justice of the peace, get married. There was all sorts of different things. Maria had to become a full Catholic. She had to be 100% Catholic before they could get married in the Catholic Church, and they didn't know what to believe. So the night that they showed up to Pathways to the Sacrament, it was, I think Juan, sitting down with Juan, he definitely was at wit's end. He just was like, you know what? I don't know if it's even worth it at this point. It seems like there's too many loops that we have to jump through. And again, he's getting this information from folks who really aren't qualified to give it to him. And he just he definitely showed up discouraged.
Yeah, very discouraged.
The good news is at Pathways to the Sacrament, we oftentimes have someone from the tribunal there. We definitely ask the local parish's annulment companion to be there, and a priest or deacon. So in this case, we had Deacon Jeff and his wife.
Yes.
This is at Sacred Heart. So the Pathways to the Sacrament was at Sacred Heart. And Juan and Maria didn't speak very good Spanish or English. So we were the ones who translated and helped them fill out their forms, the fact sheet that needs to be filled out, made sure that they understood, what they were filling out and the purpose of it, and then helped them understand their individual path. And that's really what Pathways to the Sacrament is everybody has a specific path and based on their situation. So they were able to get valid information thanks to the deacon and his wife as to what their path would look like. Of course, things could change, but at least they had a vision of kind of where the path would go. And so that night I definitely saw Juan and Maria leave there much more relieved, much more
with hope,
and basically saying, it sounds like we need to maybe sign up for a pre-Cana or
all the requirements, right?
So they understood what was their path, including marriage preparation. So
yeah, and one more thing that was more, I guess, pressing for them is that Maria was now pregnant with their child.
It was their first child
together.
Yeah.
And so I remember Juan saying, I want my daughter to be born in a sacramental marriage.
That was his desire.
So beautiful to hear that. It's a conversion in itself, that they really, really understood what it meant to have a sacramental marriage, to be in a sacramental marriage, to have Jesus in your marriage. So that was very, very impactful.
So not too long after that, I don't remember how many months, but the beauty was that we got an invitation to their wedding, and we were able to see Juan and Maria married there at Sacred Heart.
Yeah,
with a lot of friends,
family support,
witnessing this beautiful union, this beautiful sacrament being formed, and they were able to do it, even though it seemed like it was a mission impossible. Even though at the very beginning, when we first met them, they didn't feel like it was that important. But the more they learn, and that's what another thing that happens at an information meeting, is the emphasis on what is a sacrament and why is it important for your marriage and the graces that flow thanks to that sacrament to you and your spouse. So I think the more they understood that this wasn't just about two people coming together in a civil type way or formalizing some type of living together arrangement, then they really started to understand the importance of this, and they stuck with it. And there were folks like us and others that were accompanying them in the process, and it was beautiful to see their marriage. And it was even more beautiful not too long after that to see a text message come up with the newborn baby at the hospital. And they were able to achieve what they wanted.
And Maria, had been wanting to become Catholic too. And so it happened that, she was able to go through the process also. So she received communion too. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful ceremony, a beautiful witness of God's grace, in them. That was just amazing.
And the other thing that's important to note is Sacred Heart has a marriage ministry team now. Several couples form that, and they're for the Spanish-speaking community. This is a Spanish-speaking marriage ministry team, and they're on fire. They're really just focused on supporting that Spanish community. And one of the members, the core members of that, is Juan and Maria. So they are now serving other couples and helping them on their path to the sacrament of marriage, and helping them enriching their marriage through enrichment programs.
Yes, and I remember, Juan and Maria kept saying, we want to be helping, we want to help, but we don't think that we can help until we get our marriage convalidated. And we're like, okay, we will help you. Anything you need, we'll support you. And they did, and they are a wonderful couple, wonderful example, and just how it's possible to do this, and they didn't have to do it alone. And that's what's amazing about Pathways, that you are not alone. You receive the support of your parish. Yes, and
do you have another one you'd like to share?
Yes, I have 3 today.
Okay.
So today I have another one, and but I wanted to tell your story when we got married in Ecuador.
I'll be honest. When we got married in Ecuador, I didn't speak Spanish. So, but it was, it was, I guess you could say, confusing for me, because again, I'm going into another country, and I didn't quite understand the process. And we had, prior to going to Ecuador, so we got married in '96, and we met in the U.S. and at the university. And so in my mind, it was, I had a lot of older aunts, uncles that because the altitude of Quito, Ecuador, we had been advised that it's better at their age, we're talking 70, 80-year-olds, that it's better that they do not travel. And they really wanted to be part of the wedding. So we said, well, let's go ahead and have a civil wedding in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And we'll just have a justice of the peace preside over it. And then we'll actually get married in the church in Quito at a Catholic wedding. So what we didn't realize at the time is doing the marriage in
a different country, I guess.
In the U.S. and in front of a justice of the peace was something that the folks down in Ecuador at the church needed to look at, which they did. And they understood that it was us. We were getting married, and it was only a few months prior to our Catholic wedding. So, that whole process, especially for, in this case, Juan and Maria, I can kind of relate to just the confusion, because you don't really know what the process is. Because there's a civil aspect to marriage, and there's also a Catholic aspect to marriage in every country.
Most Hispanic countries, yeah.
And so I just know that I was leaning on Raquel heavily to say, okay, what's next? What do we do next? But and I can only imagine that they did go through, and they initially looked at the fact that we were previously married, but to each other, and there was a lack of form because it wasn't in the church. And they, of course, we were able to have the church wedding. And
but you weren't even Catholic.
And the other thing is I was not Catholic, and that was something that a lot of folks, again, they, like Maria thought that, I had to be Catholic before I can get married. But we've been married in the church for 24 years now, and I was not Catholic. But going through that process definitely gave me the appreciation and the interest in becoming Catholic, especially when I had to sign a document that, and Raquel's like, what am I signing? And Raquel's like, well, this is to say that our kids are going to be raised Catholic. And I'm like, okay, well, if they're going to be raised Catholic, I would like to know something about being Catholic. So that's when I started my path of conversion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Okay.
I remember it was very fast too. And in Ecuador, of course, at that time, I want to say 90% of the people were Catholic, so it was unheard of, somebody getting married that was not Catholic in the church.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But anyway, so the second story is the story of a couple that had been married in the Methodist church. And I want to say they were married. I don't have this exact information, but I think it's like about 30 years they were married. And but both of them were raised Catholic. And of course, along the way they stopped practicing, and they knew that they at some point they wanted to get their marriage blessed, I guess. So that's why they went to the Methodist church to get married. And of course, when they started having children, and they wanted to send them to the Catholic school nearby. And once they brought the kids to the school, they started to think more and more about their marriage. And of course, they thought, well, we already married in the Methodist church, so we can only have our marriage be blessed. So they asked the priest at the time at that parish, they asked if he would just bless the marriage. And of course, the priest said, sure, I can bless the marriage. So they became very involved in that parish, and they were very supportive, did a lot of things. The kids, of course, went through school, they received all the sacrament there. And so it was just a wonderful family.
They were at home in a Catholic parish, yet
but they felt that they had married in the Methodist church, and that was it. So then things started to get really concerning to them, because their son had said that he wanted to move in with his girlfriend. They weren't even thinking about marriage. And so they felt really that it was powerless, because they thought they didn't have that example of being married in the church. How can they now ask that from their kids? And so they felt powerless. So I was forming a marriage ministry at that parish, and we decided to host a Pathways to the Sacrament. And we had the advocates, or the annulment companions there, the marriage ministry coordinator. We had, and even father came to visit and just give the support to the couples. And so when he came in, and of course Lori and I were there, Chad was traveling, and when he came in, he was like, oh, you guys didn't have anybody today. Oh, I'm sorry, nobody showed up. And we were like, no, yeah, we have one couple, and that's the couple. And he just like, I cannot believe this couple needs.
That couple had been so active in the church that he was for sure that they were
married in the
Catholic church.
And he had noticed, they were not receiving communion, but he, he's not going to ask, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things, you don't ask, they're not going to tell you, right? And if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. So anyway, so then, of course, with the help of father and the annulment companion, they were there, the advocates, I think, they were just there to give them the information they needed. And it was basically a short form, I guess, process.
Very short.
Yeah. So they were able to get married on the same date that their original wedding date. So that was even more special. And what was really, really extra special is
you think that was special? Wait till you hear this.
That day, their son proposed to his fiancée and wanted to get married in the church. So I was like, oh my God, that is so.
What an example. And that's all they wanted to be. They wanted to be the right example. Their kids were becoming adults, and they felt that they needed that example of sacramental marriage, and they wanted to experience it so they could hand that down.
Yes.
And be
and it's a ripple effect. I mean, if you value something, other people see that you value that, then, they're gonna do it too. They're gonna follow your example. So that was very, very special. And even, they were able to tell their story at their retreat. They had a retreat at that parish, and they were there up there,
They were
witnessing.
one of the speakers sharing their story. So they, like Juan and Maria, this couple also felt called to, okay, now let me share this with others. And so it was very beautiful.
Yeah, so that was that was very impactful to me, to see that it's not only affecting the couple but also their family members, and then also the community. So that was super special. And then the third couple is Bob and Karen, and they had been married for, I think, 40 years, about 40 years. And they both had previous marriages. And they knew that they had to get their marriage convalidated. But, life got in the way. They had children. Who would know, right?
That shakes up a life.
There was at some point job instability, and then they had to move, I think, twice. So life is hectic. And at one point they had looked into getting their marriage convalidated, because their children started to receive the sacraments, and they wanted to share that with them. So it was like, okay, our kids are doing this and we can't receive the sacraments with them. So that was a little bit of what a pain, I guess. It's more painful.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, painful.
Yeah. And then so then they decided to inquire at that time about the convalidating their marriage, and they found out that it was very expensive at that time, and also for a family of 4, of course, and especially if they're starting,
whatever the cost was, I'm sure it was like one of those,
where you're thinking,
we can't cut that, carve that out of our money right now.
Right. And yeah, of course. And then also that it would take a long time, because both of them had been married previously. So that even added to the stress. So, they just, and it was just I guess, embarrassing situation for them when the kids would ask them, why don't you receive communion with this? And it just, again, feeling powerless. Right. So of course we decided to host a pathways at their parish. We were at St. Catherine's, and of course Vincent is there, and he's very involved with the tribunal. So he had his heart in this. So that night that we hosted pathways, we had like 25 couples that came, and a lot of them were Hispanic. So I remember Marta Lertolers was helping translate also. I mean, it was a long night, but it was
it sounds like
worth it, And so then after that, they were able to, Bob and Karen were able to go through the process. They found their unique pathway. They went through the process, and they were able to convalidate their marriage. So the parish decided to host a marriage ceremony for all the couples that were ready at that point. And they had actually 5 couples that had completed the whole process, and they were able to get married at the same mass in front of the whole congregation.
Nice.
It was just so beautiful, and everybody in the congregation applauded, and all the couples felt welcome, all these, like, Bob and Karen, 37 years of marriage, and they felt like they were in the sidelines almost, right? So they were welcome. And then of course the parish had also put together a beautiful reception. So the bride and grooms, they were wearing nice outfits and white dresses, and they had flowers, they had a cake. It was just, I mean, they were glowing. The brides and grooms were glowing. It was just so beautiful. And I remember at the end, after the wedding, Karen and Bob said that they now can die in peace. I mean, that what else can I say? Just get teary. Yeah. And so I mean, those are the witnessing of this, of helping the community. The community getting involved and helping these couples go through convalidation. But there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings of the process. And I remember when we were doing we were scheduling a Pathways to the Sacrament. I remember one of the volunteers saying, "Oh, we're making divorce easier, huh?" And I was like, "No, it's not about making divorce easier." And again, I am not surprised of that comment, because there's a lot of misinformation. We don't know what we don't know. The parishioners don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think Pathways, when I was training the ministries in the different parishes, I had one session dedicated to Pathways, and everybody's like, we had no idea that Pathways is doing this, that convalidation, the marriage convalidation process could be this way, and why is it important to help the couples? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, we forget, Pope Francis actually told us, what did he tell us about being a church that is a field hospital?
Right. Yep. And there's folks out there who like these couples that we just shared, who were in the same pews as we were, yet they didn't feel that they, could have a sacramental marriage. And just by setting up a information meeting, which is what Pathways to the Sacrament is, it's an information meeting, inviting the right people, annulment companions, priest or deacon, and just some loving couples to be there and receive them and accompany them.
An accompaniment.
That accompaniment is critical. So just having that hospitality, that accompaniment, sitting down with them, helping them understand their individual path, and that's it. I mean, it's really a essential service, we believe, mm-hmm. To our church, to the community, and it's bearing fruit. I mean, not only are these couples coming into communion with the church, but they are also, and in a couple of those cases you heard just how active they're now becoming, even more mm-hmm. active. Or in one of the cases, Juan and Maria, they were Christmas and Easter Catholics, and now they are on the core marriage ministry team, very, very active. So it's simple, effective, and I think it's much needed, because there are a lot of folks out there, and as Pope Francis had said, thinking of the church as a field hospital. In order to have a field hospital, you need to focus on understanding, being able to look at someone and say, hey, this is kind of your situation. I can help you, first of all, and give them some hope. And that's another thing that Pathways, that information meeting does, is give them some hope, because they've been looking for it. They just haven't got the right answers, and now they're going to get the right answers, and that'll lead them on a path of hope. And so,
yeah. And also for the couples that have not gone through the marriage convalidation, sometimes we forget that Christ came down, the word became flesh to be in us, and in our marriages. We need him in our marriages. He's the only one that can lift up our marriage. And sometimes we take it for granted, or I don't know.
No, I think we are accustomed to natural love and really trying to work things out through our human love. Mm-hmm. And once you start to realize that you can tap into that supernatural love, your marriage can tap into that supernatural love, that divine, that eternal, that wisdom that we as humans will never be able to fathom, but we can definitely tap into it. So
yes,
and that's another, that's part of Pathways, is to kind of open a couple's eyes to the fact that their marriage can really take off. And
yes. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to host a virtual pathway to the sacraments, because of course, we think this is so important that we can't wait until we know when.
Can't wait until everybody says all clear,
Okay.
COVID's over.
And
Yeah.
I know the tribunal's still working, and Tim and Ann, what is the last name? Oh, honey, I can't remember.
Tim and Ann.
Tim and Ann, I can't pronounce their last names, and I don't want to do that.
Hergenrother.
Hergenrother. And they said they would support us and give advice to the people that need it, and so we decided to host a virtual pathway to
And
the
when is that?
sacrament, and that's going to be Monday, this coming Monday, and I think
Do we have a flyer for
Mike
that?
has the flyer. There we go. So yeah, so registered down there in this, the one that says tinyurl.com, pathway to the sacraments, and we will send you a link for the Zoom meeting, and it's tonight, the June 29 at 7 p.m. And if you have any questions, my email is there, Raquel@livethelife.org.
Yep.
If you need any other,
So share it, even if those that are listening today aren't, already sacramentally married. But if you know of someone, share this information with them. It's a virtual meeting. They don't have to come in contact with other humans except for virtually. So it's safe. And again, it's, I think, essential because there are couples out there, and you may not even realize it. That's another thing that's interesting, is just how, you see people at church and you just assume that they're married in the church, but you find out later that they're not. So anyway, we appreciate the time that you guys have spent with us today.
yes,
And we hope that these stories helped
inspire
you and raise some awareness about this important process. Whether you choose at your parish to do Pathways to the Sacraments, the information meeting, or your own form of information meeting, we believe it is important that parishes set up information meetings like this multiple times a year.
Yes.
And make sure they promote it, so that those folks who may feel, as Raquel mentioned, sidelined, if you will, know that, wow, there's something I can go to and learn more about this.
Yeah, and those are our stories.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Raquel and Chad. It's such a misunderstood process, and it's amazing how many people may be out there unaware of how simple it may be. It really just depends on your circumstances, but just the blessings that come from it are immeasurable. So it's if anyone has any questions or anyone has any interest, please reach out to Raquel and Chad. Use the tiny URL link below to sign up for this virtual meeting. And do have a couple of questions for you both, if you've got a moment. So one question, and I think this question concerned maybe some clarification on what the convalidation process is. But the question was, catechumens and candidates who are not civilly married, can they receive validation before receiving the sacraments, if there's no other impediment other than living together? So if they haven't been civilly married, the convalidation process would not be for them.
Oh, because they're both together going through the RCIA?
Yeah,
correct. So what would you recommend in that situation?
Well, I think sometimes we are. Are you talking about, like, if they want to have a ceremony or a wedding, actual wedding ceremony? Because I know that, is that what they're talking about?
Not sure. Just reading the questions as it was stated. So maybe it's a clarification on what the convalidation process actually is.
So yeah, maybe we can reread that question again, if you don't mind, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. Catechumens or candidates who are not married civilly, can they receive validation before receiving the sacraments? So these are individuals who are in the process of becoming Catholic, but they're not married civilly.
Not married civilly, so
living together.
Yeah. Impediment at that point to go ahead and.
Yeah, I think that the they are going through, they're being living together, and they're going through the process, right? Is that what they're saying?
To become Catholic.
To
Correct.
become
Yes.
Catholic.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I definitely, they definitely have to go through the process,
normal
normal
marriage.
marriage preparation before they can receive what is it called?
Sacrament.
The sacraments,
Yeah.
the sacrament. But because if they want to get married in the Catholic Church, one of them has to be Catholic, and if both of them are not Catholic,
Right.
they
So
have-
they need to, if both of them are not Catholic, one of them, and they're going through the process. Once they become Catholic, then I would say they would go through the process to become a
Yes.
married couple in the
Yeah,
Catholic Church.
and you know, each parish has the way that they want to prepare their couples. The diocese has some guidelines, but each parish has their own way of how to prepare their couples. And I know, like, if we also provide a service or a retreat that is for couples that have been living together and they're convalidating their marriage.
Yeah. And there are looks like we have a Tim and Ann. Yeah, that's so Tim and Ann would just they were our lifeline, and they just confirmed go through the normal marriage process.
Yeah, they have to go through that. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So, anything else? Yeah. What other ones do you have, Mike?
So based on what you've seen in some of these stories, what are some of the common obstacles for people in their minds, mentally or otherwise? What keeps them from entering into this process? And what words of encouragement might you offer those couples?
Yeah, those are some good ones.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So, I mean, we mentioned Juan and Maria. I mean, that there are folks out there who think that both need to be Catholic, and that's not, we are a testament to that. I was not Catholic, yet I got married in the Catholic Church. So that's one. The other would be, folks who may not see it as critical to their marriage, right? They don't, they're living together, they're getting along fine, and maybe they just, they don't understand what the sacrament of marriage is. When we ask folks, what the sacrament of marriage is, which is typically one of the first questions we ask before we present at a Pathways, there's a lot of misinformation about what even the sacrament of marriage is. So it's just getting them understanding of that in some cases is an obstacle.
Yeah, and sometimes they're afraid, of what the process is going to bring, especially like if they had previous marriages too. They don't want to open those wounds again. And I mean, that sometimes, we're talking about 20 years ago, they had a relationship, but whatever happened in that relationship, they don't want to go.
So going down memory lane maybe is another one, definitely, depending on the situation.
Right. And also I know that the process has been I guess reduced. I guess what's it called? There's a part of the process that was taken out, and so it makes it a lot easier for those couples that are afraid to go back and relive it. Yeah. And of course, they don't know what they don't know. I think that's the biggest thing. They don't know what the process is going to be, how long is it going to take, and also how much money is it going to cost.
Yeah. And that's another piece would be money. So a lot of couples also, as you heard in the call today, is, they're at one point, it was a pretty, sizable sum to go through this process. And now that, as far as we know, I don't think it's changed. It's been waived, that fee, at least in our diocese. So that's I think helping folks who have that financial impediment, if you will, to come forward. So the words of encouragement, I would say, is come to a Pathways to the Sacrament or some similar type of information gathering to get good information. Mm-hmm. No one's going to commit you. No one's going to say, you're here, you got to do it. But come and hear more about the beauty of the sacrament and let the Spirit kind of guide you from that point forward. That would be our words of encouragement.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that just about does it. I don't have any other questions to present to you, but you did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for sharing this much needed resource with the diocese and with couples who might need to pursue this route. I mean, it is a sacrament. Marriage is more than just a civil institution. Christ elevated this to the level of a sacrament, and there's just so many graces that become accessible to you by opening yourself up to him. So I want to thank you both for heading this on. If you have any questions, again, email Raquel at livethelife.org. And if you want to attend this virtual session, just follow the URL below. So thank you both very much for being with us today, sharing your wisdom and insights, and God bless. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.